one.
Hey Vikings, I'm going to show you the differences in dietary fat. First of all, there's 3 different types of fat that you eat. There's something called saturated fat. Saturated fat is solid at room temperature, like this bacon fat. Most saturated fat comes from animals. Not always, but most of the time saturated fat comes from animals. We have the other fat that's natural in nature is unsaturated fat. Unsaturated fat is liquid at room temperature. Most unsaturated fats come from plants. Some fish oils are unsaturated, but most come from plants. Then there's a third type of fat, and it's man-made. It's called trans fat. This isn't butter, this is margarine. So what margarine is an unsaturated fat that's been chemically treated to be solid at room temperature to act like a saturated fat. Okay. Now, not only is there fat in and obviously there's fat on this bacon, but there's fat inside the bacon meat too. You can see in here there's little veins of white streaking through there. Butchers call that marbling. That's fat in the meat. Hamburger has fat in it. Steaks have fat in it. Pork has fat in it. Now, poultry, chicken, and turkey, they have fat, but they don't have fat within the meat like red meat does. Fish doesn't have too much fat within the meat either. It has a little bit, but it's healthier fat usually. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is I'm going to show you how these things affect your blood and your blood vessels. What I'm going to do isn't exactly what happens chemically, but it is pretty much what actually happens to you. Okay. Fats make something called cholesterol. And the cholesterol, depending on the type of fat you eat, builds up in your blood vessels and leads to strokes and leads to heart attacks. So I need to first turn this trans fat into a liquid. So I'll do that. I've already turned the bacon fat into a liquid. So what happens when you eat saturated fat is a type of cholesterol called LDL cholesterol, stands for low density lipoprotein. That's a pretty cool word right there, huh? LDL cholesterol, it's also called the bad cholesterol because what happens when you eat saturated fat and your body produces LDL cholesterol, it goes into your bloodstream, and when it gets into your bloodstream, it starts to harden and become gooey, and it starts sticking to the inside of your arteries like that. Kind of nasty. It's gooey and sticky and really kind of gross to play with. Might look cool. It's really not that cool to look at or to feel. Okay? So that's a saturated fat. Other saturated fats are butter, the fat that's in milk, which is butter, in ice cream, bacon, whatever. Okay, any kind of fat you eat, pepperoni, the fat in cheese, that's saturated fat. Now, unsaturated fat also creates a cholesterol, but it's called high density lipoprotein, or HDL, which is called good cholesterol. And when it gets into your blood, it doesn't build up this nasty, look how nasty that is now. See all that in there? Cholesterol in your blood. this stays liquidy. It doesn't clog up the arteries. It doesn't lead to strokes and heart attacks. In fact, if you eat a healthy amount of unsaturated fats, it will actually help reduce and take some of this out of your blood. And so, especially, they're called monounsaturated fats. Olive oil, peanut oil, avocados are particularly good at taking out this kind of stuff. Okay, so this is melted, I'm hoping. Oh, yeah. So now remember, this margarine is made from the same stuff as this liquid vegetable oil. This oil, I think, is soybean oil. And I'm pretty sure that is too. But it's been chemically treated to be hard at room temperature. And so when it gets in your blood, it starts to act like the saturated fat right next to it. And it gets slimy and gooey. And actually, trans fats are more unhealthy than saturated fat. Because not only do they build up in your arteries like this stuff, they don't build up quite as hard, which would sound like a good thing, but it causes, besides creating more bad cholesterol, it takes out good cholesterol. So it's kind of a double whammy. You're adding bad stuff and removing good stuff when you eat those things. For that reason, trans fats aren't as common as they used to be. They used to be in a lot of processed foods, things like that you buy at the store, like wheat thins or a lot of cookies. The Keebler Cookie Company used a lot of trans fats. They're not allowed to use them anymore. Restaurants, fast food places used to use a lot of trans fats and they don't anymore. So they're not as common in the diet as they used to be. But you can still buy them, and if people choose to buy them and use them at home, they're adding stuff to their food at home that really isn't very good for you. Okay, so review. Saturated, solid at room temperature. Unsaturated, liquid at room temperature. Trans fats, man-made fat that's unsaturated to act like saturated, and it's the worst one for you. Saturated fats cause cholesterol to build up in your blood, and so do trans fats. Unsaturated fats do not put sticky cholesterol in your blood. So that's been there a while, it's still nice and liquidy. All right, so eat well, be well, work hard. See ya.